Hey, 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 everybody. Welcome to Critical Q&A for, this is number 463. Jesus. A lot of questions, a lot of answers. Hi. Welcome to my show. Here we are live on Sunday, and yeah, it looks like we're all synced up sound-wise and everything, too. I'm sorry for the mic deficiencies on Friday. We had some funky mic stuff. I think it was because I had the AC on. And it was, I think when that's going in the background, it messes with the sound filters or whatever, and it sounded a little off. And so here we are today, and hopefully the sound is a lot better. I've also slightly moved my setup a little bit over. I don't know if you noticed in the background there, but my Iron Man thing fell off the wall, and it's fine. I have it hanging up somewhere else now, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just adjust the background or whatever. So there you go. All right. Anyway, hi everybody. So we're live. I see some of the usual suspects and critics in the comments here. It is a slightly noisy time right now in the ex-Scientology world with me. People are attacking me again. It's fun. I'm getting canceled. And I really don't care. I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to do some good. I'm here to help as best I can. I've got appointments later today to meet with people on ex-cult stuff. I'm just going to keep doing my work. And if people want to make a bunch of noise about stuff, you know, well, that's nothing new for that crew, but I've got work to do, and I'm here to do it. So I'd like to spend our time today working on that. What do you think? I think that's a good idea. I've got a couple questions preset in the queue, but let's get the comment box, the question box up, the Q&A box. So... no, I don't. Thanks, Stuart, for asking. I do not need a new piece of art there. I got more than enough. I'm just sort of, I wanted to kind of accentuate this side of the equation anyway. So so it to work out just fine. Okay, so let's get the Q&A going. Please put, as we do every week, I am posting a comment in the chat box here. Your questions. One of these days I'll learn how to type. Please put your questions under this comment. Thank you. Something like that. Good, start Q&A. All right, so now I've got the Q&A box officially up here. Let's switch over to the host and chat screen so we can see your chat up on the screen there. And, okay, cool. Okay, good, so here we are. Everybody arriving, and this, oh yes, and I need to, yeah, thank you, X-Scion, for reminding me. I need to actually adjust some things on my desktop so that I can prominently display my book again. Thank you for reminding me. I'm doing all this house cleaning while we're here on the air. How's that? There we go. How about that right there? Good. And I might as well get this, let this cat out of the bag right now, since I'm such a popular guy these days. I am in the middle. I've mentioned to some of you, I'll just put it out there. It's actually adds pressure to me. It makes my life more focused and more directed if I do things like this now. So I'm not putting this out here as an attempt to overpromise and underdeliver, because I am going to deliver on this. The target as it is set right now is I wanted to get this done by October. I'm still got my fingers crossed that I can pull that off. I'm a little behind on my schedule, but I've got the main project I'm working on right now is I am writing a book, and I am writing a second book on cult recovery. And I'm not going to get into the details of it. You'll see it when it comes out. We've been talking about cult recovery stuff all year on this channel. And so I thought, well, I'm going to put it out there because it helps pressure me a little bit to put the time in that I need to get that work done. I get distracted by stuff like noise. And I need that distraction kind of off my plate so I can just kind of focus and get the work done. And so me telling you guys that's what I'm doing is an effort in that direction. Okay, good. Yes, we do have questions coming in on the Q&A. And oh, we need some new merch. Okay, good. I can work on that. Absolutely, I can. Good. Okay, so now with the questions coming in here, let's go ahead and get to the Q&A. Okay, starting from the top. Xion asks, besides Scientology, what is the craziest cult you have ever heard of? Ooh, good question. Let's see. Craziest. I'm going to say a type of cult. And I find it, maybe craziest is not exactly the right word, but I was reminded of this the other day, and it's a kind of activity more so than a specific group. Sorry, I'm not going to go for a specific group in answering you, but this is what comes to my mind right now when I think about this. And let me look this up here. And yes, and I was just, like I said, I was just reminded of this the other day, and it's so weird. It's so interesting. It makes so much sense, and yet at the same time, it's human beings acting in their most rationally irrational way, I think. And what I'm looking up here is the term cargo cults. And I don't know if you guys are familiar. Let me go over this real fast. It's a term used to denote various spiritual and political movements that arose among indigenous Melanesians following Western colonization of the region in the late 19th century. Although the term cargo cult has been used by anthropologists to label almost any sort of organized village-based social movement with religious and political aspirations, features common to most cargo cult groups includes the presence of a charismatic prophet figures foretelling an imminent cataclysm and or a coming utopia for followers. Claims made by these prophets vary greatly from movement to movement, with some predicting return of the dead or an abundance of food. Some movements sought to appease ancestral spirits or other powerful beings by either reviving ancestral traditions or adopting new rituals, such as ecstatic dancing, or imitating the actions of colonists and military personnel. And here's where we get to the heart of what a cargo cult kind of is. The term cargo cult first appeared in print in November 1945. See here. Just trying to find a very simple. Okay, here it is. Stemming directly, here's the direct quote from 1945. Stemming directly from religious teaching of equality and its resulting sense of injustice is what is generally known as Valela madness or cargo cult. A native infected with the disorder, and it's not really like a disorder, okay, this is 1945 speak. A native infected with the disorder states that a great number of ships loaded with cargo had been sent by the ancestor of the native for the benefit of the natives of a particular village or area, but the white man, being very cunning, knows how to intercept these ships and takes the cargo for his own use. By his very nature, the New Guinea native is peculiarly susceptible to these cults. That's not a really great explanation for this. Basically, it has to do with the fact that let me see if I can find a better. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place with this. Thought that would give it Yeah, here we go. Strange religious movements in the South Pacific that appeared during the last few decades. In these movements, a prophet announces the imminence of an end of the world and a cataclysm which will destroy everything. And it's based on the idea, why it's called a cargo cult is because it's based on the leftover debris and stuff of earlier or more advanced civilizations that these people get hold of, these machinery or these devices or these things, but they don't know what they are, and they don't know how to use them or interpret them or even have any context for what they could be. And so they assign supernatural powers and abilities to these devices, like old, like you could imagine if you had a group of natives on an island who were not up on technology, and a box of iPhones crashed on their island or something, and the batteries still worked for a little while, so they glowed and they were like, what is this, and they were enamored and awestruck by these devices and by this stuff, and they develop an entire supernatural belief system around these things. And that's where I was trying to get to with this, and it is the most fascinating thing that people will get up to with this. And I just wanted to, that's what occurred to me as an answer to the question here. And going back to the Q&A box there. So that was what I thought of an answer, is like people, the tribes, old you can't blame these people. It's ignorance. It's not stupidity. It's not that they're subhuman or something like that at all. It's simply that they are being given things, or their stuff gets in their vicinity, and they end up worshiping it, or they end up using it for some supernatural belief system. And again, there's a charismatic leader. It becomes very culty. There's a whole structure that falls into place. It's all the usual cult trappings. And so that's what I think of when I thought of the answer to your question. Sorry for the very roundabout answer. I was hoping Wikipedia would give me a more concise breakdown of it, but I couldn't. I stumbled about there. But there's my answer. Thanks. Okay, let's carry on here. Fabian Andel asks me, was the guy who built the e-meter also convinced it can do what LRH said it can do? Yes and no. At first, Volney Mathison is the person you're referring to. He was an electronics guy. He was a chiropractor guy. He was a pseudoscience peddler, just like Hubbard was. And he built the first e-meters, the electropsychometers. And he had ideas that were not the same as Hubbard. I explained in some detail these elaborate explanations that Hubbard came up with for the e-meter, and how it had to do with sheets of energy, and you're mocking it up, and the Thetan theory and all this stuff that enters into it. Mathison knew that it operated on galvanic skin response. He understood that concept, but he had other ideas about what was working with the mind and the relationship, and he had his own kind of thing going with that. So it sort of ran in parallel with Hubbard for a while until they broke off, and then Volney Mathison started decrying L. Ron Hubbard as a cult leader and con man and somebody not to be doing business with. And eventually, recognized that he was a full-blown cult leader. But Volney never really gave up his own weird pseudoscientific ideas, and he pushed a lot of weird stuff, not just the e-meter, but he had a thing that would hang from a chain, if I remember right. It was like this little pendulum thing, and it was supposedly something that you could use, or spiritually, or somehow, what's the word? Energy wise, you could manipulate this pendulum thing and come up with answers to questions you had. He was kind of a grifting kind of guy too, and I think he also believed in his own bullshit, but doesn't mean the grift is any less a grift. You're still getting robbed. At the end of the day, you're paying Volney Mathison for some booklet on how to use a weight at the end of a pendulum to answer your questions. This isn't science. But he would claim that it is, right? So that was Volney's kind of take, is he was not vicious. He didn't have a mean streak or a vindictive streak in him like L. Ron Hubbard did. But Volney had some goofy ideas for sure. Oh, Fluffy, I have not. I'll have to look into this. Wondering whether you've heard of Kat Torres, the Brazilian influencer, and her cultish behavior. What are your thoughts? I am Let me just make sure, because I have heard of a couple pretty strange people. Let's see what we get here. Built a large following on social media in the U.S., used her online presence to lure victims into her web of exploitation, sexual, financial, and mental, according to a BBC report. Oh, she was a model, and she used her influence to run a cult-like society of vulnerable women in the U.S. Ex-model linked to DiCaprio, now in jail. Okay, wow. Wow. Oh yeah, she was sentenced to 8 years in prison for human trafficking and keeping sex slaves while she acted as a wellness influencer. God damn. No, it's first I'm hearing of this one. So thanks for bringing that up on there. And I'll have to look into that. You know, if I was doing my news show, I'd probably have a news article about this, but I've been kind of buried in my book project when I'm not. I mean, my life lately has been channel content with interviews of other people from my podcast, which you guys have been seeing. I've got like 4 in the can right now. I can't wait to get to you guys. I got like 4 more interviews lined up next week. Working with one-on-one with people and my writing, and then trying to keep my correspondence up, my emails and stuff, because I get a lot of that. So that's pretty much what my life has been. I've had very little outreach and a little bit of distraction recently over some of this noise and stuff, but that's dying down, and I'm you know, whatever on that. So yeah, so that's what's happening there. Okay, so let's carry on here. I always feel a little, you know, oh, I should have known about that. But at the same time, I'm always like, yeah, and there's 5,000 plus cults out there. I can't keep up with all of them. But I definitely appreciate you linking me to that story. That's good. Okay. Ooh, lots of questions today. Let's carry on. X-Cyan, before you knew the Xenu story, what did you think the Wall of Fire was, and what the event was that happened 75 million years ago? What a great question. Let me go back over here and make sure that my feed is all good. Yes. My, there we go. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure that I'm running up to speed here on this. Okay. This is really good. Because I used to wonder about this endlessly when I was in the Sea Org. I mean, endlessly. I thought about this a lot. I was really stuck to the OT3 mystery. I had been played RJ67, Ron's Journal 67, very early, like within days of doing my OCA and starting to do services or lining up to do services at the org in Santa Barbara. This is back in 1985, way back in the day. I was presented with this information and this mystery, and I mentioned to you guys that my dad a few times had alluded to implant stations on Mars and galactic civilizations and space opera stuff to me when I was a kid, but it was always just kind of hit and miss, you know, kind of like Hubbard would do. He'd just drop these lines every now and again, but really not follow up or give you any coherent story or anything more than, well, I can't tell you more than that, or you're going to get sick. Which is not a really great thing to tease your kid with, you know, and my dad would do that from time to time. Not all the time, maybe a handful of times, but it was annoying. And so when I heard RJ67 and L. Ron Hubbard talk about this great catastrophe that happened in this sector of the universe that made this planet and the others in this sector of the universe a desert, he said, and a wasteland where people, you know, have been trying to survive ever since, it was really compelling. It was very intriguing. I was absolutely wrapped up in what could this mystery be. And I would research Scientology information. This is why I know so much about Scientology, is because I was always trying to figure it out. And I was diving into the lectures and the books, trying to sort through goals, problem masses, and the R6 bank, and the ridges, and the engrams, and all this terminology for all these phenomena, or these constructs that would exist in our minds, and trying to take that apart. And I had this idea that going OT, okay, if the state of clear in Scientology is basically a first dynamic activity, I'm just dumping a lot of Scientologies here and answering this question, okay? If it's a first dynamic activity, it has to do with yourself only. You no longer have your own reactive mind. Then I thought, okay, and if going OT means you're going clear on all the dynamics, you're clearing all the dynamics, then that means that you're going to have to address reactivity on the second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way up to the eighth dynamic. And if that's true, then somehow there must be some clearing process for dealing with these other dynamics directly. Somehow that's what the OT levels must be about. They're not about you. They're about something outside of you, or dealing with the world outside of you. And I would correlate this to success stories or wins or things I would hear from OTs, where they would talk about how they would go in session and make an effect on something outside of themselves. They would talk very directly about this. I could go in session, I could deal with this problem with my boss, and my boss would act differently. This was part of the narrative of this. And I thought that, oh, you're very welcome, Sam Slade. Thank you for that super chat. So I thought that there was some process, some spiritual outreach that required you to either exteriorize or somehow envelop or enfold, or somehow have take responsibility for things outside of your body, outside of your immediate concerns. There must be some magical process or procedure they're doing with the e-meter that is allowing them to somehow contact and deal with other people's case or stuff. Because I couldn't conceive of a body thetan. I had no idea about body thetans. That part of the story and that concept was completely not part of my thinking. It's not referenced anywhere in any of the lower level materials. You will never, ever find any reference to body thetans. The only thing you'll find in earlier materials are references to entities. And that was always kind of weird to me, the idea of entities. Hubbard talked about having these sub-thetans or something within your body, kind of controlling things maybe at the joints, or somehow, elaborating on, or somehow parallel to the concept of chakras or something. There were a few different concepts introduced around these ideas of entities that made it unclear what the influence was of these. Are they fully external, fully separate beings that occupy the same place I do, or are they somehow subunits of me? Hubbard talked in Dianetics about how you could have parts of your mind sort of walled off and create they create what he called like little cysts, CYST, like they are encysted, they're kind of separated by the charge, and they act like independent entities in your mind, and they talk to you and things like that. But they're just parts of your mind. They're not separate entities. And so I struggled to connect that information with the concept of entities, and I wasn't really sure where that went. It wasn't, and so I didn't think about it never occurred to me that BTs were at the heart of this whole problem. And so that concept wasn't there. So instead I thought that somehow you were using some kind of tone 40 intention as a thetan, as an OT, powered up, supercharged thetan to deal with other people's case somehow. Hubbard also talked about, the other reason I thought this might be along the lines of what it could be is because Hubbard referred in one bulletin, one time that I'm aware of, he talked about earlier efforts to rehabilitate or cure or help thetans who had all this charge, all these mental image pictures and reactive minds and all this. How could you help a thetan without Dianetics and Scientology? Well, you could just rip their pictures away from them. You could, one thetan could go up to another thetan and just steal his stuff, literally his memories. And this was called like picturology or something. Hubbard said this was a thing. It didn't work, he said, and it didn't last very long, but it was the only real effort in the back track to cure or deal with mental image pictures and charge and all of this stuff that Dianetics deals with in Scientology. So I kind of amalgamated all these concepts together, I guess, is where I got these ideas from. So that's my long answer to your question of where I thought things were going and what I thought I'd be doing on the OT levels. This was my best possible idea. Oh, and how could I forget, right? The other big part of OT3 and the announcement about it from Hubbard that you do get to know about is that there was a catastrophe. Something really, really horrible happened. And he said that it happened around here to this planet and the other planets in this sector, right? And if you look up in the technical dictionary, you'll find references to the Espinal SAR system, the Marcabian system, the Marcab Confederacy. So one gets the idea that it's like Earth and maybe 13 or 14 or so other stars that have populated planets around them. So I was thinking to myself, well, what kind of catastrophe could turn all of this into like some kind of desert for the last 75 million years? Must have been some kind of huge spiritually involved war or something. Oh, again, because my dad had told me, I'm rolling up all these memories for you guys here today, because my father had told me that that the Galactic Council was made up of beings who were kind of half meat bodies but also half OT, right? Like they kind of were aware of the fact that there was a spiritual existence and that they were thetans with bodies. They didn't think that they were just bodies, and that this awareness was out there, not here on Earth, but out there somewhere, this galactic council, right? So I imagined that many, many millions of years ago, maybe, things were a little different. I didn't yet have it all, I hadn't yet read Xenu. But maybe things were different where there was more awareness of this kind of thing. And so the battles or wars that happened that devastated this region must have involved some kind of ghost busting or spiritual sort of war. Maybe it was thetans versus meat bodies, right? And as I've said many times, what does that look like? It looks like Ghostbusters, proton packs and electronic fields and flows capturing spiritual entities and enslaving them or imprisoning them. That's Ghostbusters. And that's what Hubbard suggests is what was going on. So I figured that the big catastrophe was going to be something to do with something like that, or involve something like that somehow. That was my absolute best series of guesses and conjectures about what OT3 was going to be about. So as you can tell, I was pretty far off. And yet some of the elements were there. So yeah, so there you go. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right, I'll answer this one. Beyond Jehovah's Witnesses asks, Chris, you part of Scientology does your dad still believe in? I guess you're asking me what part of Scientology does my dad still believe in? Basically, the idea of rehabilitation of a spiritual entity and, you know, trying to do that. And, you know, he's kind of an independent Scientologist that way, I guess. You know, I don't really know how much he's doing with it these days. We don't talk about this stuff at all. So, you know, just that kind of stuff, just that there's a spiritual existence, that rehabilitation of a spiritual entity is possible. He said it's a lot more work than Hubbard said it was, that Hubbard was way off in the estimation of effort it takes to free a Thetan. You know, so that's what I can say about that. Okay, Andrea Bauer. Oh, here's some funny questions. What is your favorite color? What is Mel's? How would Hubbard explain that if Thetans can control mest, he didn't fix his teeth? Oh, great question, Andrea. Okay, my favorite color is a very deep ocean-like blue. It's inspired by the color of the ocean off the coast of Monterey in California. I was driving up the Pacific Coast Highway one day, and I looked over, and there was just this deep, rich blue color. And in the last couple of years, I have seen a car paint color that is remarkably like that blue on a couple models of cars. Yeah, really deep blue, right? I really like that color. My wife's is purple, I believe. She likes that color, and so do I. And I don't know how Hubbard could explain that. Cause over teeth, right? Hubbard definitely needed the tooth rundown. He was deathly afraid of dentists after his apparent perilous experience with dentistry in 1938. When he almost died, he said, on the operating table. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but I do know that Hubbard was loath to go anywhere near dentists. He did not enjoy doctors or dentists. So, you know, so that was just him being caused over his teeth, obviously. No, I choose for my teeth to look this disgusting. All right. John O'Nolan, were those yellow daggy Scientology Works t-shirts a thing back in the 70s and 80s? Were followers expected to wear them outside? What a funny question. John, that's a great one. No, Jeff Pomerantz, a Scientology celebrity, popularized that shirt because he would wear it when he went to the Portland Crusade back in the 80s. And then if there was any kind of a crusade that was ever called in Scientology or call to arms of some kind, Jeff Pomerantz could be counted on to trot that shirt out. But as far as I know, he's the only person I ever saw wear a big yellow shirt that says Scientology Works across the chest in big black letters. And that was kind of his calling card for protests and activism and things like that. That's kind of where that came from. I never saw anybody else with that. That is not to say there weren't people doing it. I'm just saying I never saw it. I only know about Jeff. All right. Ex-Cyan, a guy came to my door dressed in a long sleeve white shirt with a black vest and black shoes. I waited for him to say he was a Scientologist, then I yelled bye and slammed the door. Was that bad? No, it wasn't bad. How do I put this? Sometimes rudeness is the right answer. You know? Cult members do not deserve your time or attention. They haven't done anything to deserve you going out of your way to talk with them, help them, assist them, do anything for them. In that sense, and of course, I'm not referring here to children, okay? I mean, But when I say that in this sense, cult members are, sort of responsible for their own condition, what I mean, of course, is that, if a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or Scientologists shows up at your doorstep, you are not under any obligation or duty to try to talk them out of their belief system or their dogma or do anything with them at all or even engage with them. And if you engage with hostility, then odds are they're not going to take to that very well. But it also is a way of communicating disfavor, right? Disapproval. You're a total stranger to them. It's not going to really be that much of, that much skin off their nose. But it is a message of, I strongly, strongly disagree with you and what you're about, And if that's the only message you can send them and want to send them in the moment, go for it, right? Don't include on top of that, something like by asshole or by jerk off, right? That kind of thing. But simply, no, I'm not interested in this whatsoever, right? Hey, do it. You get enough slam doors in your faces, it gets discouraging, right? It is a way of communicating, disapproval. But like I said, don't be mean about it, though. That's my best advice. Don't be mean about it. Be finalistic about it. That's what I would say. Okay. Oh, it's an interesting question. Fabian asks, what do you think about hosting a group chat in Clubhouse or TikTok? More interactive than the call-ins. I don't like TikTok. I'm not familiar with Clubhouse, but I will say that efforts on my part in the past through Patreon and YouTube to do more connected sort of things like that kind of fell flat. And I was surprised, but I didn't take it personally. It was just it wasn't the kind of thing that my Patreon supporters wanted from me. They were just happy to give me support. They didn't really want a bunch of perks and membership things and stuff like that. I've tried implementing that stuff in the past and done a great deal of work on that, actually, with little buttons and little things and things to give to my Patreon supporters and stuff. And I'm not saying nobody didn't, people appreciated it, but they weren't going out of their way for it. It never really incentivized new memberships. And it wasn't really a thing that people were doing that for. So at least that was my takeaway from it. So that's why I kind of ceased, trying to set things up like that. Private or, sort of special call-in events or group chats or stuff like that. Never really took off. So I guess those are my thoughts about it, right? So I just, instead I end up doing, Q&A shows like this, which has been incredibly popular, very, very easy format to do, both pre-recorded and live. This is really, really, immediate, feedback type of work. It's pretty much like this. And then the call-in show, we did the call-in show with a call-in line that I was paying for. Every month I had to, put down money for that. And I wasn't, to be honest, I just wasn't making the return on investment on it, right? And the calls that came in on my call-in show on Fridays, it wasn't really what I envisioned that show to be. I thought, there are people out there that disagree with me, that have a problem with me, that have issues. Maybe they'll call in. Maybe we can talk. Maybe we can sort some stuff out. Maybe we can have conversation. Not once, right? Nobody ever calls in to sort stuff out with me. They just decide that they hate me, and then they unsubscribe and block me, and that's that, right? They don't want to talk about it. We don't live in that world. I don't know why, but we don't. And I put myself out there, and I put myself out there, and I put myself out there, and it just doesn't happen. So I thought, okay, this just isn't what's working. So I'm going to stop doing it. And so instead, I do my Friday show with my wife here, and we converse with you guys through the chat. And that seems to be working, at least for the format and way we've been doing it. But I am always open to suggestions of change. And if you have ideas that are going to improve my channel or my shows, I really am open to it, but I'm just giving you the raw feedback here of what I've tried to do and the results of it, which were, you know, didn't really blow things up. So I thought, nah, I'm not doing it right. I got to do something else or do something different or whatever, you know, and stick with the things that do work. And so, so this is what I'm doing. Okay. Thanks for asking though. Appreciate it. And like I said, I'm seriously wide open to any ideas people have. Okay, Young Matador. Hey, Chris, with Tony last week, you mentioned high-level recruiters declaring hands-off to other staff members when trying to recruit Aaron Cairo into the Sea Org. Are recruiters that territorial in the Church of Scientology? Oh, my God. Yes, they are. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah, Stuart had asked in the regular chat about Travis calling in. Travis was the exception. Now, don't get me wrong. I always appreciated when Henny and other people would call in and, you know, sing our praises and we have these wonderful conversations. Don't get me wrong. I didn't hate those conversations. I was more than happy to have them. I love engaging with you guys. And Travis would always bring the most wonderful questions. But, you know, again, it wasn't really like growing anything. And that's what I felt like I was lacking or missing there, I guess. And maybe that's just my thing, but... Okay, so anyway, as far as the hands-off with other staff members, okay. Yes, Sea Org members, Sea Org recruiters are incredibly territorial, and there is cross-recruitment and rip-off recruitment and, you know, this kind of thing all the time. They will fight over recruits. And so, you know, the smackdown has to come from on high sometimes to sort things out or judge who's going to get the recruit. Other times it's more kumbaya and people are just get them on the EPF and we'll sort it out. There were efforts made over the years to get all the recruiters to just recruit into a pool. Just get them recruited. Don't promise them what org they're going to go to. Just get them into the EPF and we'll let, you know, HCO sort them out, right? The personnel people sort it out. And that was an effort for a while, but it de-incentivized the recruiters to re-recruiting for their own orgs because at the end of the day, they're held responsible for the stats from their own orgs, right? And when they're not, and it's a pooled recruitment statistic thing, it just didn't work so well for the way that Scientology manages its production. So keeping the stats up was competitive between the organizations. It tended to default to that. And there could be full-blown wars and, you know, knowledge reports flying and tempers rising and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that can happen. Absolutely. And sometimes, but with people like Aaron, Cairo, right? People like, VIP types, celebrity types, you have to kind of get authorization or kind of get okay to go after people like that. When they're considered a big money maker or a VIP within the Scientology world for some reason, they'll tend to fall under Celebrity Center, President's Office. Somebody's going to have some attention on that person from on high. And the recruiters can't just go start recruiting that person. They have to get okay to do that, right? Because the church might want, like for a Tom Cruise or a, you know, an Aaron Cairo, they might be better suited and served by staying where they are, doing what they're doing, making a big impact on society and positive PR for Scientology and all that. So, it tends to be, you know, a little specific for the individual people. Okay. You know, I am a little curious about this myself. Somehow I've missed this. X-Science says, what's the significance of Fresca in the boys? I'm not sure. I know it's in there. I know they're drinking that soft drink, Fresca, but I couldn't remember exactly why. I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that question. But I know there's a whole subreddit called the Fresca Crew or something. I mean, there's like, it's a thing. I just don't remember what that thing is. Which is really bad of me because I've been watching. We just talked about the boys the other day. Okay. Oh boy, so many. Okay. This is called, okay. Great question, Polar Vortex. X obtains a higher education, a degree, but finds he has questioned whether his degree is real and at the same time criticized for being unprofessional. What logical fallacy is this? This is called ad hominem. That's the first one comes to mind, right? Amongst others. False equivalency, another one that comes to mind. Got a whole deck of them here, bunch of them. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. X-Sign, why do some political figures triple down on the obvious lies and misinformation they make? Okay, couple of things. Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody enjoys it. And some people, well, we all know about confirmation bias, and we know about cognitive dissonance. We know that when you are presented with two or more facts or opinions or ideas or emotions or concepts that are mutually exclusive, they don't go together, you have to sort that out. You got to figure out, is it X? Is it Y? Is it an amalgamation? Is the truth somewhere in the middle? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? But if you have strongly held beliefs, if you have a reason to hold strong beliefs, if you are financially motivated, politically motivated, influence motivated, relationship motivated, religiously motivated, to believe a thing, especially financially motivated, especially, you will tend to want to believe that despite a mountain of evidence being given to you to the contrary. Right? That's how our minds work. I don't want to let this belief go. It's so valuable to me. Right? And so it must be true. And facts don't just line up in our brain like little dominoes and one equals another equals another equals another, right? Some facts have much more precedence or much more significance to us than others. Neutral example, right? When I was in Scientology, I was a cult member, there was a spiritual existence. That was a foundational belief. It was very, very senior. It was a senior belief. It was a very, very important belief. It was foundational to, here's another way of putting it. It's foundational because other beliefs are built on top of it, right? It's Jenga. It's a Jenga of beliefs or ideas or opinions or a logic train, you could say. Another way of explaining that would be it's a built structure of belief or ideas. And if you start removing pieces out of there, right, the whole thing could come tumbling down. And if you start taking key support pieces out, people can feel it. They realize that that something foundational is happening here, and it's not only going to affect that one belief, it's going to affect everything. And they don't want that. They deal with that the same way people would deal with grief, with anger, denial, all kinds of pushback. When you're dealing with a narcissist type person, a predatory type person, their response is what we call DARVO, right? Where they not only deny, they actually turn around and attack you, and then to really add fuel to it, right, to really make it awful, they then reverse the victim and offender. So they make it out that you're actually victimizing them over you're trying to take this thing away from them, right? You're making me into a victim now. How dare you? So easier, much easier for your average, and everything I'm talking about so far is just going on inside their head. There's a lot of incentive to not give up your foundational beliefs or ideas or opinions. Again, especially if they're financially motivated. Now, on top of all that, you have all the social influence and problems. Because if you're a public figure or a political figure, these two things obviously are synonymous, you have a base of people who you have presented, I am the blue candidate. I am the blue candidate. And suddenly, blue is toxic, or blue is poison, or blue is, there's some big, huge problem with blue. But your entire identity is wrapped up in it. your entire power base is wrapped up in it. And all the people who follow you because of your stated positions about blue. So, if you suddenly, somebody says, oh, well, blue is all wrong. And maybe it is. Maybe blue is just, totally crap. But you've built your entire identity around it, right? And branding and image and everything. So if your power relies on that being true, you will never, ever, ever agree that it's not true, will you? Right? Unless you're somebody who can own up to, letting some power go, and not too many people are like that. So that's what I got for that. Okay. Plus, by the way, some of them are just jerks. See, sometimes it's based, all the things I just said were based on the idea that the person actually believes what they're saying or peddling. It could well be that they are very aware of the fact that these are strategic propaganda and that it's being used to create an effect on a group of people whose power they need. They need their money, they need their support, they need whatever. So they're going to keep doubling down on the lies and bullshit they're forwarding because they know that maybe they don't believe it and they know maybe it's not really true, but all these people who follow them do believe it's true. So in order to keep them going, they have to keep saying those words or expressing those ideas. That's another reason that happens. Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay, let's carry on here. Beyond Jehovah's Witnesses. Do former cult members like us really shed 100% of our culty beliefs? Or does it take a lifetime to do this? Ah, great question. It really depends on the person. It also depends a little bit on, and I run into this with Scientology all the time. I think this is worth commenting on. It also depends a great deal on what you think of as culty beliefs. Let's use the obvious, right? Scientology. The ARC triangle is a Scientology-specific construct. It only exists in the Church of Scientology. There is nowhere else in the world that I'm aware of that you're going to find the philosophical engine that is the ARC triangle, right? Hubbard came up with that or modified it from whatever earlier, ideas he had. You could very, very accurately, easily classify the ARC triangle as a Scientology construct or belief and something that you can shed. You can let it go, not believe in it anymore, and no longer give the ARC triangle credibility or use it in your life or your thinking, and you can kind of let that go. That would be letting go of a culty belief. Easy peasy, no controversy there at all. But then you come to another principle in Scientology. When in doubt, communicate. Excuse me. Is that a culty belief? It's an L. Ron Hubbard quote. It's a very repeated mantra within the world of Scientology that you don't hear other groups necessarily saying. But conceptually, everybody says that. There isn't a group in the world that doesn't have some variation on that concept of when in doubt, communicate. You got a problem with somebody? Go talk to them. There's an issue? Let's sort it out. Let's talk. Let's communicate. This is a universal concept. It's everywhere. So is that a culty belief? Well, there's cult baggage from Scientology connected with that belief. That baggage consists of an over-reliance on the concept of when in doubt, communicate, an extremity of belief, an idea that this rule is a golden rule that will always work in all circumstances. When in doubt, communicate. Sort it out. You can do it. Through communication alone, any problem can be resolved. that's when you've crossed the line into culty belief. Because the truth is that not every difficulty or problem can be sorted out with communication alone. Some cannot, right? If Ted Bundy is walking towards you with a knife in his hand, you ain't going to talk him out of it. You could try, and I mean, maybe you could, but it's not really a universally applicable idea there. You got to turn around and run. You got to get the hell out of there. Communication is not the universal solvent when it comes to some serial killer walking towards you with a knife, right? Or other examples of hostility. You're getting mugged in a, in an alley or something. Communication isn't the universal solvent. Get the fuck out of there. It's the universal solvent, right? Nike is your solution. So you see what I mean, right? It's not an either or black and white kind of thing, but it's a common sense principle that has some culty baggage connected to it. So as part of your cult recovery, you want to get rid of that baggage. But recognizing and differentiating how the cult twisted that idea versus the idea itself having some validity would be part of the recovery process, I believe. That's how I would classify that. It's losing some of the loaded language of the cult. So can you shed 100% of that if you work really, really hard at it and try to get every single little piece out of your head? I mean, probably not. Especially second gens, if we're being honest, right? Especially if you're raised with it. Because the thing about being raised with stuff is there's all kinds of landmines. You just forget. You forget all about it. There's all kinds of little details and data that is just laid into you that you have accepted so openly and so thoroughly that it would never even occur to you to question it. Not for years along the recovery line, do some of these things pop up for your inspection. Remember that it's onion layers of recovery. You're going deeper and deeper and deeper in as you go through time. As more and more time passes, you're going deeper into your psyche to find deeper and deeper, more foundational, fundamental stuff. But that takes time, it takes exploration, it takes education, and it takes a lot of work. It's not something that just organically rolls out. Some of it's real hard sweat and work. So is everybody willing to do that work? No. Is everybody need to do that work? Greater or lesser degree. Right? How much is it affecting you in your day-to-day life? How many nightmares are you having? How much trauma is occurring to you or is being triggered, rather, I should say, as a result of the lingering effects of the cult beliefs? Tackle that stuff. Deal with the stuff that's presenting itself to be dealt with. And don't think too much about, well, am I really getting 100% of it? Who cares? Get what you need to in the moment and longer term, and just do the best you can, because that's all we can do anyway as we're going down this line. I'm stressing it this way because I don't want to put an answer out here that's going to result in somebody further judging themselves harshly because they're not getting 100% or because they're not doing enough or something like that, right? What you're doing is enough. You're here, you're listening to me, you're trying to get educated, you're watching videos, you're reading books, you're trying to do stuff. Maybe you're getting therapy. You're doing the work, okay? So I just don't want to put any answer there that's going to put undue pressure or ideas in people's heads about this, right? It's like growing a YouTube channel. It's like I say with people doing that. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Recovery, cult recovery. It's a marathon. It's something you're going to be doing for a while, maybe the rest of your life. I think I will be. And yet I've also said very plainly, I am recovered from Scientology. I don't feel the lingering effects of the Church of Scientology layered into my thinking or my emotions or my triggers or my reactions. I feel I've moved on from that in every way that you can. that doesn't mean I'm a perfect person, that I don't still have triggers, or that I don't still have some trauma, or that I don't still have confusions or problems or issues in my life, right? I just don't have them because of L. Ron Hubbard. Not that I'm aware of at this point, right? I'm pretty sure I've moved on from that stuff. But that doesn't mean, like I said, there's still other issues, as everybody knows. Okay, so there you go. Okay, Anthony Spurgeon. You guys have great questions. Is there any supernatural phenomenon you believe is plausible, or at least so compelling it feels true? Supernatural phenomenon. Okay. I am willing for almost anything to be true. I'll say that. Let me say that first. When it comes to supernatural stuff, right? I'm literally thinking right now about, like, 2 days ago, I was in the kitchen at night and I was hearing some weird noises, and my mind immediately was ascribing supernatural, explanations, right? Ghosts or something like that, right? And I was like, where's that coming from? And I thought, well, of course that's ridiculous, but yet, there it was, and ding, 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 hey, maybe this is a ghost, right? I'm willing for that to be true, but I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't think that there is anything like that. I don't think there's ghosts. I don't think there's creatures. I don't think there's telekinesis. I don't think there's, I don't think there's clairvoyance. I don't think there's mind reading. I don't think there's future prediction. I don't think there's any of that. I don't think any of that is real. I'm willing for it to be true, but somebody's going to have to explain to me how. And if there isn't a how that makes sense to me, then I have a real hard time with the what, right? Oh, it just is. Right? Because I can imagine or explain psychic belief and future predictions and all the other stuff. I can offer explanations for these things that are rooted in, more science-y type stuff. And maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong with those explanations, but at least I have something. And it's not just, oh, well, I know it's true. I feel it's true. I lived it, therefore it must be true. That's the same kind of crap that people come out of Scientology with, right? Well, I had auditing and I had a good experience, therefore auditing works. No, that is the most illogically wrong statement you'll ever make as an ex-Scientologist. I had an auditing session and I felt great, so therefore, ... We all make the most unwarranted conclusions based on our faulty logic of trying to explain the things that happen to us. And we struggle because we don't have all the information. And up until the last couple decades, how could we have had all the information when it comes to neuroscience or psychology? We're barely getting there in answering these things. So I don't always have to have an alternative explanation for a supernatural event in order for me to not think it's a supernatural event. I don't have to have an explanation, but I can usually dream up something that's possible, that's plausible, as opposed to, I have no idea whatsoever why, so it must be psychic powers. I don't go there. I don't default to that. I don't want to default to that. So I'll default to, or I will try to explain anything I run across in the world or with people and their behavior through natural explanations. I will endeavor to do that. Lacking that, I will leave it in the category of I don't know, or bookmark that. That's very interesting. As opposed to, oh, that must mean that they're psychic. Oh, that must mean they can predict the future. Oh, that must mean they are a spiritual entity. you know, because they can remember things the doctor said when they were under in surgery. So that must mean that L. Ron Hubbard is right and engrams are real and the reactive mind is true. I mean, you see, just because you can have a memory of something doesn't mean L. Ron Hubbard was right about anything. One does not follow the other, but people want it to be true, so they will connect those dots logically, and that's bad critical thinking. And that's what I try to avoid doing when it comes to supernatural beliefs. There's my big soapbox on my supernatural ideas. I'm going to need to look this up. Jono, I am sorry. You asked me about things that are so great, and I just need to remind myself of stuff sometimes. Eckhart Tolle, German-born spiritual teacher, self-help author. I've looked this guy up before. A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment, New Earth. Yeah. I seem to remember not liking this guy very much. Okay, let me go to the question. Sorry, we pull the question up here in the box. John O'Nolan, any thoughts on the spiritual? Oh, it was up on the screen there. Okay. Sorry, I think I just... Okay. So any thoughts on the spiritual teacher slash author, Eckhart Tolle? He wrote the book, The Power of Now. Not a lot. I don't have a lot of thoughts to share with you right this second. As I'd have to go look it up and remind myself of all my thoughts from the past on that guy. It kind of goes in alignment with what I was just talking about, though. I'll say this: not remembering too many specifics about what Eckhart had to say about this. Just the fact that he's positioned himself as this metaphysical spiritual teacher, I'm like, okay, not super keen to hear a whole lot about this, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's not my thing. Not my thing. Okay. Ex-Cyan. What was the happiest day of your life? And do you think you'll ever be that happy again? God damn with these questions. Ooh. You'd think that would be an easy question, but it's really not. The happiest, not a happy, but the happiest. Now I got to think again. Damn, it's such a split. It's such a split. Because there's a couple answers here. The day I met my son was absolutely, positively one of the peak moments of my entire life. No question about it. Peak happiness, peak joy, peak everything. Going down to Australia years ago and meeting him and spending some time with him, right? Absolutely fabulous. But so was getting married to my wife. Huge day for me. Huge. Right? My second marriage here. Absolutely peak. It's really hard for me in looking at these two experiences to say which one was the happier one. I don't know if I can. I'm thinking about the feelings, and it's just, you know, yeah. I'm gonna split the answer there. I'm gonna say it's both of those things. Do I think I'll ever be that happy again? I hope so. I want to be. Yeah. I hope I see my son again at some point in my life, physically. I mean, he's down in Australia. He's literally on the other side of the planet. It is not easy to arrange to go do that. But, you know, yeah, that's I don't know. That's my answer. I hope I will have a day when I will feel that good again. I don't have a miserable life. I have depressive moments and episodes, but I don't have weeks or months of like, awful. I just don't have that life. I have good days, bad days like everybody else. But generally I'm pretty upbeat guy. But peak moment is a very different thing from an upbeat guy, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say about that. That's my answer. Thanks for asking. Xian, do you have a song that immediately eases your mind and brings you to a place of calm and peace? I will say that. I love this question. And I love this question because I don't know about you guys, but I will put out there that music is a second language for me. And I don't speak it super, super well. I don't know how to write music or play music. But music has been special for my entire life for being the language of emotion in a way that words fall down. Sounds, somehow it symbolize, signify, epitomize, I don't know, represent feelings and emotions and ideas, concepts, big, huge ideas. You can communicate things with music, with those sounds that are so impossible or so hard to communicate with words. And it's moving. It really can be. It can really have a very powerful effect on you. I've always loved musicians and music for the power that it has to create reactions in people that where words fail. And I think it has a healing power. I think that making music, if you can, is akin to, like journaling. It's a way of getting stuff out of you that if you can speak that language fluently would be, an absolutely amazing way of expressing your emotions and feelings as a former member. And lacking that, of course, we find music that is significant or meaningful or has, connection for some reason. And I think that's a very, very, I think there's a lot of catharsis possible, a lot of healing possible there. That all being said, I don't get to comment on that very often. So I wanted to with this question. I have a very rich music catalog in my head. I have for my whole life. I've been in the music for a long, I mean, we all love our music, right? We all love the music we grew up on. We all have catalogs of music. We all, have our streaming playlists and all that. I really, really have been, into a lot of different kinds of music over the years. So when I think about this question, a place of what brings me to a place of calm and peace. I don't have a one go-to. It changes. Maybe it is for you too, right? Maybe sometimes it rotates. Maybe during one period or for one mood you're in, one song or one instrumental or one piece will do it for you. Whereas when you're in a slightly different mood, an angsty mood or a sad mood or something, maybe something else will do it for you. And maybe sometimes that changes because your mood changes or because time changes. The old doesn't do it for you anymore. You got to find something new. Or maybe there's a steady Eddie for you. Maybe there's one that just is your go-to. I'll tell you that, between my wife and I, for example, we have Elvis Presley, Can't Help Falling in Love. That's our song. and there was a whole story connected with it at our wedding that was very beautiful, and it's just kind of our song, and if things are ever in a, you know, and having a rough emotional moment or whatever, you know, we can put that song on and, you know, we're good. And you don't overdo it, obviously, right? It's not every day, oh, Elvis, right? And of course, if that was happening, you might have other issues. But for me personally now, this is going to sound funny. This might surprise you guys, but what's coming to my mind right now, as far as like old, faithful, I can fall back on them kind of things, or the ones that stick with me longest there's a song from Power Windows, which is an album, a 1980s album by Rush called Marathon. And it's about running. It's about running a marathon. And I find that song very inspiring, motivating. I return to it often, right? It's in my head off and on. It's also Tom Sawyer by Rush. That'll get me going too. That's a more jammy, you know, kind of rock song, but that doesn't necessarily bring me to a place of peace, but it does clear the queue, kind of, you know. Love Rush. Yeah, I'll just say that. I'll end it at that. Okay. Beyond Jehovah's Witnesses, since Tom Cruise has been attending the Olympics, do you think that he's trying to persuade the American Olympics to Scientology? No, I don't think Tom Cruise is doing that. Tom's a savvy player. He's not stupid, right? He's not going to say and do things that's going to end up on, you know, some blog or some headline or somewhere, you know, Tom Cruise trying to convert new Scientologists out of athletes. He knows as well as everybody else that would go down like a ton of bricks, right? I think he's learned a few lessons since the early 2000s, mid 2000s about PR and Scientology. So no, I don't think he's over there doing that. Now, of course, at the same time, Scientology is always worse than you think. And Tom Cruise is always conniving to do something with Scientology. But, you know, so anything's possible, of course. And if he had the opportunity, he would disseminate to somebody. If he thought somebody was open to it, he would promote Scientology to them. But I don't think that's why he's over there. You know, I noticed John Travolta was over there too, watching Simone Biles the other day. Man, is she like the greatest of all time or what? Holy cow, is she good? Man, it's like watching a god of gymnastics, watching her work. She is amazing. Anyway, John Travolta was watching her the other day over there. I'm not sure what that's about. You know, maybe they're just over there showing support. I really don't know. I have no idea what's going on with that. Maybe they went over there for the Paris opening and stayed for the Olympic thing. You know, they just made plans. I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure that there's nothing unusual going on there in terms of Scientology trying to, you know, make some play of some kind. If so, I just need more information because I don't think so. Okay, John O'Nolan, what are your thoughts on Marc Yager? Did you know him personally? What was he like? Okay, Marc Yager was a tall, thin man who grew up in the Sea Org as a Commodore's messenger. He was on the ship with Hubbard. He was a young man who was one of the young Turks who was with Miscavige and the others in the 70s and 80s, running Scientology, getting it going, right? All the stuff that the young Sea Org guys were doing back then, you know, bending people over a barrel, torturing people, doing all kinds of gangbang, sect checking. He was part of all of that stuff. He was very, very much part of the whole terror crew that almost destroyed Scientology, really. You know, is what happened back then. And he survived that to become a high-level executive, part of Miscavige's inner circle, the inner core of Scientology management. And he was he held a variety of posts of jobs over the years in the Sea Org at the upper levels. He was a WDC member, which means he was part of the Watchdog Committee. He was the Inspector General for admin or something for a while under Miscavige, I think. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was an effort in that direction that was short-lived. He ended up apparently got in a lot of trouble, according to Mark Headley, in the 2000s for trying to stage some kind of coup or trying to do some kind of mutiny, and got busted, ended up working in a hard physical labor in Happy Valley or around on the base. Maybe not Happy Valley, but certainly he might have got sent over there. But he was certainly on the Gold base doing the worst possible work. I think he was cleaning the emptied out pond or something, and he was covered in shit, and it was just gross, and he got sick. I think there was some bad stuff there, if I'm remembering right, but you'll have to look that up. And he was very, very, very sternly punished. And after that, I lost track of where and what he was doing, except for the fact that he was one of the people who went out with Jenny DeVock, to give Marty Rathbun a hard time at the airport once or twice on video. He was there bull baiting Marty and giving him a hard time and trash talking him and stuff, at the bequest, obviously, of Miscavige. So Mark had been sent to the hole along with everybody else. And that's what I know about him. I ran into him a couple times as a Sea Org member in the Sea Org. I met him personally. I didn't have dinner with him or have conversation with him, but I saw him, I worked with him in terms of him coming down and doing inspections at the PAC base. And he was a mean guy. He was somebody I was afraid of by reputation when I was in. I didn't know any of this stuff about the Young Turks and the Sea Org and him, and I didn't know any of that stuff, but I knew he was a jerk because he would come down and he was the kind of guy who would throw books at you and stuff. Like there was a story that was told within the Sea Org at my level, where he came down and was doing an inspection of the International Training Org, ITO. And this was like the third and fourth floors of the Hollywood Guarantee Building. And it's where international executives were supposed to go and be trained. And up until Miscavige's whole thing with Golden Age of Admin and doing it all through FLAG, people were trained as executives at the ITO, and that's where they went to do it. So he was there inspecting the new refurbished ITO facility one day, and there was an out-of-print book, an old version of one of the OEC, of one of the policy volumes. And he pulled it off the shelf and screamed at somebody about this book being there. And this is a big book. This is not a little paperback book. I want you to imagine like a 9x7 bound book, like a big tome, hardcover tome. The policy volumes, the green books, that's what I'm talking about. He threw that thing across a room and hit somebody in the head with it because he was so pissed that this book had been allowed to be left in this space. You know, that's who Marc Yager was when he came down and did inspections. He was the mean one. You know, a lot of the guys who came down from Gold or came down from INT, they were nice. They would put on their nice face. They would be really, really, really wonderfully nice people to us. I had many, many positive interactions with international executives over the years who came down and were aware of the fact that there was a power disparity and they weren't there to abuse it. They were there to get things done, and they wanted my help, or they wanted the work of other people, and they ordered us around and all that. It wasn't like they were being my pal, but they weren't throwing books at my head. You know, Marc Yager was that kind of guy. He's a real dick. Maybe he was just having a bad day, but that was literally his reputation. That was just an example of the kind of thing he would do. So I never liked him, but I didn't really ever know him either. So that was my experience as a PAC staff member with him. And I feel sorry, after I found out that he, had tried to stage this little mutiny and gotten relegated to the, the duck pond and stuff, and had been covered in crap and gotten sick and all this other stuff. I felt really sorry for him. I didn't feel like, just rewards, motherfucker, right? I didn't feel like that at all. I think anybody who's abused my miscavige like that doesn't deserve that. It was horrible behavior and typical miscavige. But I can't speak to anything more about Marc Yager as a human being than what I just said, because that's all I know about him. So there you go. Yeah. All right. Wow. We're already almost an hour and a half into this. So I'm going to try to, let's see where we're at here. All right. Let's see if we can power through a few of these. Chris, have you ever done a show on the political cult of Lyndon LaRouche? I have not. No. I have spoken about Lyndon LaRouche in passing a couple of times because of the culty aspect of his political base. This has been long noted before I ever came along. People were calling Lyndon LaRouche a cult leader for decades before I ever hit the scene. So I'm just echoing earlier sentiments. But I don't know a whole lot about him specifically. I haven't done that show. We've done shows about other ideological cults that are more current and relevant, and so I thought those would be more exemplary. You know what I mean? Kind of show more of what an ideological cult is. If I start talking about the cult of Trump or cults of personality built around political figures, because there are, it's not just Trump, but there's nothing in politics that comes close to the cult of Trump when it comes to cult of personality. I've never seen anything. Lyndon LaRouche doesn't have a candle to hold next to Donald Trump's cult. It's bad. I'm telling you, it's bad. As a cult expert and somebody who really does know about this stuff, it's bad. And I don't care if you believe me or not, or want to hear that or not. It's true. And I can't say it's not. I can't bend it because I make people uncomfortable. There's a cult. It's built around Donald Trump. It's very real. These people have lost their damn minds, that just like Scientologists have. And that's right there. And it's in our face every day. So I've tended to talk more in that more relevant, more present time direction in talking about ideological cults than I have talking about Lyndon LaRouche. But it's a fascinating story, I'm sure, and one that should be told at some point. So maybe we'll have to do a show on that. Oh my God. Okay, Red Pill Medley, here we go. Do you think Gary Busey is more coherent than Scientology? That's a good question. That's a good question. I'd say it's a tough call. That's a tough call. Hey, last time I saw Gary Busey, he was doing like pet judge court or something, pet court or something. Absolutely ridiculous. It was pretty goofy. I feel sorry for Gary Busey. I really do. What do you think about a karaoke contest in the maximum security prison? I think they would have a lot of fun. And what do you think about Reiki? I hate Reiki. I hate the entire concept of the grift, the total con that is Reiki. If you're watching this and you're a Reiki practitioner or believer, I'm sorry, I don't believe any of it. Not any of it. It doesn't make any sense to me at all that I'm going to run my hands over your body and alter the energy flows and remove your pain flows or something. Give me a break. This is total grift from beginning to end. It relies completely on placebo effect, right? And belief. There's nothing to it at all. And I am livid. My emotional need for justice in the world, those bells go off in my head when I think about the millions and millions of dollars that are wasted by people paying con men and women, a lot of con women, for Reiki. I can't stand it. Makes my blood boil. Okay. Hey, Glenda, glad you could be part of the show. Okay. All right, George Smiley, could you talk about the notion of amnesty in Scientology? Could David Miscavige's future replacement just give big blanket amnesties to try to restart the Church of Scientology? Yes. The amnesties have not been used that I'm aware of since the early 90s. The last time there was a general amnesty of some kind that I remember was Golden Age of Tech. 95. If you wrote it all down, all your technical misapplications, you wrote it all down and you sent it to RTC, you'd get an acknowledgement, there would be an amnesty, you're not going to be, no more trouble for this. Yeah, that was the last time that I'm aware of that an amnesty happened. And there had been amnesties in Scientology forgiving former suppressive people. I don't think that's ever going to happen again in Scientology. I cannot see a future where Miscavige or his successor blanket forgives all of us SPs, right? I'm SP, Mark, Claire, all of us, right? And if they did, would we care? Absolutely not. There are a handful of people who are declared suppressive, who are just dying to get back into the church. It's a small list of people compared to the very much larger list of people who are declared, who put Scientology in the rearview mirror and never want to have anything to do with it again. Amnesty or not, they ain't going back. And that's, of course, the correct, view to have for your mental health and sanity. So yeah, so that's what I can say about that. Sam, I'd be very open to this. Sam Slade asks me, Chris, would you be open to having financial advisors on who might offer advice for ex-Sea Org members who leave penniless after 45 or 50 and have no retirement saved? Yes, I would. That is one of the key aspects of recovery, the logistical aspects of recovery from a cult, from moving on from a cult, that gets very little attention or discussion. Are the financial sides. And it's hard because the economy is a constantly changing, fluid thing. The rules of how to make money change every few years. We have different things come along. We have endless numbers of fads and con jobs and total bullshit being foisted off on people as ways for them to supposedly make money, which is really just get rich quick schemes for Grant Cardone types. It's very, very hard to wade through all of this and find rational, sensible financial advice. In the same way, it's damn near impossible to wade through all the bullshit about diet fads out there and try to find sensible information for yourself about how to, one, have a nutritious diet plan, and two, lose some weight, right? If you want to lose weight. What do? There's 5,000 different answers out there, and it is really hard to know when you're looking at any one of them how good or bad it is in relation to all the other answers around it. And they all sound like they make sense. That doesn't mean they do, right? We get fed bullshit all the time. And so this has been something that I have been very, very cautious about wanting to talk about too, which is why I'm, rambling about all these cons and everything, is because I don't want to inadvertently, give people advice or direction on this channel that leads them down, some primrose path of crypto or some nonsense, right? I ain't doing that. I am never going to promote crypto on this channel. As far as I'm concerned, that is just con, one up one side and down the other. So, things like that are very, very opportunistic, very, very inviting to people and are going to ruin them. So, so if we could find some good, sensible, grounded, down-to-earth advice for people on how to build up or get themselves back together again after the, you know, the devastation of being in a cult for decades, I'd be here for it. I'd be absolutely here for it. Hell, I could use some of that advice myself. So, so you can sense maybe a little bit of my frustration in having to try to look for some of those answers and being met with nothing but walls and walls of confusion and clear-cut cons, you know. But some that, are they? I don't know. And others that are like, no, this definitely is. And others that are like, you know. How are you supposed to know? Very frustrating. Okay. Let's carry on here. Okay, Beyond Jehovah's Witness asked an important question. How is Mike Rinder's health? As far as I know it right now, Mike is responding favorably or positively to the last treatments that he's been receiving. That's the last word that I heard as of a couple days ago. If I've heard it properly and correctly, I'm passing that on to you as I think good news. That's the last thing I heard. This was after he had to go back in and undergo a pretty heavy, severe form of treatment. It's been rough for him. As I understand it, it's been very rough for him, which is one of the reasons why you have seen some of my recent comments about people who have issues with Mike Rinder. I have very, very serious issues with people who have decided that this cancer victim who is fighting for his life is some kind of, you know, OSA bad guy who's, you know, personally responsible for the problems in their life. Screw that. That's total nonsense. Mike Rinder is my friend, and I stand with him 100%. And if you have a problem with that, you are misinformed about Mike Rinder, because the man is a hero, and I don't think about him in any other way than that. This business of, you know, that's going around in the community right now, that Mike Rinder has crimes he has to answer for. You know who says that? People who have crimes they need to answer for. That's who says that. So I have nothing in that direction but disdain. Mike Rinder is my friend and a hero to this cause, and I stand with him and for him 100%, unconditionally. I think that man is amazing, and I wish him nothing but support and the very best of luck fighting this cancer and surviving. That's what I want for him. So so thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about that, because, yeah. Okay. Okay, Joe DeCeppo. Actually, thank you for asking me this, Joe. I'm sorry to hear you got abuse on the call-in show. I would have called in if it was at a time that I was awake. Would you do a show of pre-recorded call-in questions? Would be good for us Europeans. Hey, thank you for that. I'm sorry if I communicated that I was getting abuse on the call-in show. I didn't mean to communicate that, so thank you for putting that out there so I can correct that. I never felt like I was being abused on my call-in show. I want to clarify. I never felt like I never felt like the people who were being kind of mean-spirited or nasty towards me would never take the opportunity to talk to me directly about it so we could sort it out. That's what I was upset about. And because the opportunity was there, created by me to put to my audience so people could interact and we could have conversations. And that just didn't happen, and that's fine. It didn't happen. I'm not like all out of sorts about it. I'm just, that's what happened. So maybe it was a bad time of the week. Maybe it was a bad time of the day. Maybe it's just not the right format. Maybe it's just not how people want to interact with me personally as I'm out here, right? Obviously. So that's fine. It's totally fine. I didn't want to communicate that I was being abused on that show. I'm sorry if that came across. I really am. So no, I don't want to do pre-recorded calls for the show or anything. That's really what we do for the Q&A shows and stuff like this one. So if you and by the way, if you do have questions for me, I've totally forgotten. I had 3 questions preset for us here today too that I put up in the question queue. But I don't think we're going to have time to get to those now. I should have gotten to those during the show. I apologize. If you have questions for me that you want to get in the queue because you can't be here during the show, email them to me at askchrisshelton@gmail.com, and I will get them in the queue. And I apologize for this week. I got so distracted with all these wonderful questions coming in, I forgot about the preset ones. But we can do that. Okay, I hope that's all clear. Okay. All right. Carry on here. Okay, Fabian Andiel, what do you think of, quote, life outside of the org is very good, regardless of your stats on Thursday, we love you, end quote, to say to a Scientology recruiting on the streets? I think that is a much, 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 much more positive message and will have much more impingement or, like register with the person more than any number of shouts of cult member, you suck, you're a scumbag, we hate you. I think if you say those words to somebody on the street, you'll get a better effect out of them than if you'll get a better effect with them and plant a seed more than you would with, hours of yelling and screaming. Okay, carry on here. Polar Vortex, question from Kurt Kraus. Can he interview Kate Lohmann? She is a current Scientologist. I have thought about reaching out to her. Dodge Landsman, I think, did something with her a while back. And I decided, nah, she's an online active Scientologist, whatever, she's low level. She doesn't really know a whole lot about it. And it would be interesting. It was not Dodge, Andrew Gold. That's right, Andrew did that. And it went fine. I remember when Andrew did it, right? He told me a few minutes before he went live that he was doing it. He did okay. If I was given the opportunity to do it, I probably would. But I'm not really, I'm not going to reach out to her or something. I'm not that interested in that. Might be interested. Might be interesting. Okay. Okay, Polar Vortex, another question from Kurt. I have bipolar disorder and I see a psychiatrist. He helps me so much. What would Scientology suggest? Vitamins? Yeah. Yes. That's exactly what they would suggest. Vitamins, supplements, taking a walk. They have something called there's, I don't want to get too technical today. I want to run through this quickly, but they have a bunch of different methods that are basically natural healing type strategies, taking a walk, eating right, getting enough sleep. I mean, these are good things to do. There's nothing wrong with making sure your diet's good, making sure you're getting some sleep, making sure that you get a doctor, that you go to the doctor and get a physical exam. And if there's any obvious issues or problems, deal with those. These are things Scientology would direct you to do. In addition, but where it gets weird and wonky is when they then tell you no psychiatric medications of any kind, no psychological or psychiatric treatments of any kind, no therapies of any kind, no treatment modalities of any kind. All you can do is the very small number of organic remedies we have, naturopathic type remedies we have for you, and Scientology auditing at the cost of, $300, $400, $500 an hour. And you better get going because that's your only salvation, bub. That's Scientology's answer to you if you have psychiatric issues. They might couch that in a lot more pleasant language than I just did, but that's basically their message to you. Stay the hell away from the psychs. They're evil and they must be destroyed. You are here by the grace of your Thetan, and thank goodness you've arrived, because now we've got a whole treatment regimen for you, and it's only going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And then after we're done with that, we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars more to charge you for our psychologically abusive treatments. That's Scientology in a nutshell. All right, Andrea Bauer, other than your book, what is your favorite book? My book is not my favorite book. So what is my favorite book? You guys ask the best questions sometimes. Some of the most simple ones can be the hardest, right? See, I think of lots and lots and lots of good books, but you stump me when you go for the extreme, right? The best, the worst, my favorite. Oh, hang on. Two books come to mind. This is going to be no surprise to people who really know me, but two books come to mind that I have read, just really based on number of times I've read a book as far as favorites, right? Stephen King, Salem's Lot, that book, Salem's Lot by Stephen King, vampire book. Definitely one of my favorites. I think I've read it 4 times. And Robert McCammon, who's a good author, but he was a little bit of a Stephen King copy in the 80s until he kind of found his own voice a little bit. But even saying that, he was his own guy. He had great stuff. And he put out a book, I think it was called They Thirst. Guess what it was about? Vampires in Los Angeles. And I loved that book. I think I read that one like 3 or 4 times. I was going through this whole Robert McCammon phase in the 80s, and I really, really dug his work. 80s and 90s, I was into him. And so They Thirst, I think, was my favorite vampire novel, following on Salem's Lot being my second favorite when it came to the books. And of course, Dracula. But Dracula is not a book I've read over and over and over again. I've read it once. So I kind of like vampires a little bit. I do. In fact, I'll share something with you I've never shared with you guys before. Nobody's ever asked me about this. This necklace that I wear is a little vampire symbol. You know where I got this? I got this necklace at a Ren fair in 2014 in Minnesota when I still lived out there. 2013. 13, 14? 13. It would have had to have been 2013. My first year out, I went to a Ren fair. And I got this necklace because this symbol of a vampire was a symbol of transformation. And I thought, am I not transforming out of Scientology? And it just seemed so perfect. It was such a perfect match at the time. And it has been ever since. I've had this around my neck ever since. Anyway, so that just reminded me of that whole thing, which I'd never had a chance to talk to you guys about that. So there you go. OBG Foster, speaking of sports, did you ever have to run around a pole? Nope, never did that. Okay, Andrea Bauer, have you ever thought of putting your Friday night and Monday shows as podcasts? I find it easier to listen than to watch. Andrea, I have not. Putting out a podcast is expensive because it costs me for the web hosting service. And then I have to take the time to convert it over to audio files, not just the video file that I already take the time to upload and do all that work. So I'll have to ask that if you want to consume it that way, you can. It's on YouTube and you can just listen to it while you're driving or on your phone or whatever, like you would with a podcast. But I'm not going to be posting those as audio only podcast format because I'd have to do a whole setup of those, and I just don't have the resources or haven't really put the time into my workflow to be able to to put it out that way. So so it's not a bad suggestion at all. I'd do it if I could, but I can't. So there you go. Okay, last question for today. Ms. Tara Green. Christianity has baptism. Islam has takbir. That's a word I'm not familiar with. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Judaism has bar or bat mitzvah. Buddhism has refuge. What does one do to become a Scientologist officially? Okay. All right. Entrance requirements. You simply have to say you're a Scientologist. Literally, that's it. That as soon as you say that and you mean it, oh, they're going to love you. That's your initiation ceremony. Is you go in for a session, you go into a classroom, you have an ethics interview with somebody, some Scientologist gives you a peak experience of some kind, and you come away with that, wow, I think I'm a Scientologist now. They got you. That's it. That's the moment. So that's how it happens. It's very non-ritualistic, you could say. There's no, but at the same time there is. It is a moment, and it's a moment that is sought after. They want that moment to happen, and when it does happen, everybody in the room recognizes this is a special moment for this person. They have just become a Scientologist, right? So that's how it happens in that group. And in a way, they want it that way because it's more powerful when it's when it seems to be completely self-originated. It's not a ritual or a ceremony where before you are not this thing, and now we're going to do this ceremony, and now you are a Scientologist. We've turned you into one. Now you have that. That's not really very convincing of a thing, right? You have a party, now I'm a Jew, right? You have, they throw some water on you, now Christ has accepted me. Like, okay, I mean, I'm not trying to denigrate anybody's personal experience with it, but there's lots of people who will not really be that into it, do that experience, and then still not really be that into it. Yeah, I got baptized, okay, whatever, right? You know people like this. I mean, this happens all the time. In Scientology, they don't have a specific ritual where you cross the line and now you're a Scientologist. You have to tell them. And they might be looking expectantly at you during specific key moments. The first time you come out of a session, or you finish your first class or course, and they're like, what'd you think? What'd you think? What'd you think? Right? They want that success story from you. But they will wait patiently for it to happen, because they know it will. If they just give it the time and push and, handle you with enough kid gloves that nothing, you haven't seen anybody yelling and screaming at anybody yet. You haven't really felt the sticker shock yet. And they're just waiting for that moment. Here it comes, right? And then boom, they got you. So there you go. That's what I can say about that. All right. So there we go. Yeah, born again. That's right. It's very much like that. Very much polar. That's right. Good. So I think it's time for us to wrap up. It's almost been 2 hours. This has been an amazing show. Thank you very much for coming around. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I sure did. I'm really glad we did not have, too many visits from the drama crew here or any kind of problems with that. Always appreciate that. And of course, I always appreciate your viewership and your support. I'm here to get work done. That's what I'm here to do. I'm not here to engage in theatrics and drama and nonsense and name calling and all that. People can have, I want to end with this. I'm going to say this, okay? And this is as much as I want to address this, and I'm only really doing it because it just got so noisy that people were coming onto my channel and dropping really trolly, nasty comments in my direction that are fueled by sheer ignorance and really stupid stuff. So I just want to end the show today by saying, if you want to know who I am and what I'm about, my channel is it. My book is it. This is who I am, and this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm about. And if people attack me or my friends, they're going to hear about it on other social media platforms where I have the right to say whatever the hell I want. That's how it is. That's the world we live in, and that's the world that I live in. And I think it's rather juvenile to try to, cancel me or do all this other weird nonsensical dramatics and theatrics because, people don't have anything better to say or do. I mean, it's kind of silly. So that's as much attention as I want to give to that, right? I got some great work ahead. I've got this book I'm writing that you guys are now in on. I've got and more plans for stuff in the future. This has been the year that we have been focusing almost exclusively on cult recovery, which is the other reason why you haven't seen other deep dives from me this year on other cults, is because I've been focusing so much attention on cult recovery. Now you know why. This has been all I've been thinking about all year. We've managed to dive into multi-level marketing pretty deeply this year. I actually gave a talk in front of government officials this year on that. And we have dived into some other very, very interesting topics like cyber harassment and stalking and the Christian fundamentalist groups that operate with impunity in this country and the undue political influence that they hold. We've gone into those cults and that kind of culty stuff because that's kind of really been in our faces over the last many months. So I've tried to stay, some degree of relevant with current events in that sense, but I've really, really been focusing the attention this year on the recovery side of stuff. And you're seeing so much stuff on my channel about that topic. And if you haven't, I hope you'll stop and take a look at it because it's all there for you. I'm not doing this at this point for me. This is for you guys. And I love learning along the way. So I guess actually in that sense, I am still doing it for me too. Anyway, wanted to share all that with you guys just so you know where my head's at and where I'm coming from with this. It's not from a place of anger and hostility and hate and awfulness. It's really not. I want the world to be a better place, and I want the people who come to my channel to have a positive experience and walk away from this with something better as a result, right? That's my goal here. And that's what I have to say. And thank you very much for your support, your viewership, and everything else. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.